Okay, well, it looks like I maybe have one person watching, so welcome, viewer. I'm going to go ahead and start up the game. I am using version 1.04, release candidate 1. Um, I already have okay, well, it looks like I maybe have one person watching, so welcome. Alright, let's see what we got here. Okay, so even though when I pop open the game launcher, it's going to say current version of the game is 1.03, current version 1.03, latest version 1.03. That is actually not the latest version of the game. If you want to make sure that you're going to use the latest version, like any Steam game, you can go to the properties, come over here to the betas, and you'll want to make sure you select 1.04 underscore release candidate 1, RC1, darkest hour, blah, 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 right? Make sure you have that selected. That's going to be the latest version. I do not know when they are actually going to set it as the primary version that you would have by default if you have Steam automatic updates on. So I would just recommend that you have that enabled from the get-go. A lot of the mods are being transferred over for compatibility's sake to the latest version. So if you do plan on running any mods, just double check wherever you're getting the mod from, whether it's the Paradox forums or what have you, and just double check compatibility. You can always hop back to 1.03 if you have to, but again, you know, going with the latest version is probably best. The changelog reads out that they've added some different events and some different things. Again, because I'm still relatively new to the game, I don't appreciate all of that, but I would recommend checking that out when you can and read through. May not really matter in the end, but if you're playing the latest version, you're going to be all set. So again, you know, ignore these numbers. They don't really mean anything. I'm playing full screen, 1920 by 1080. I'm disabling the play intro because it's just a useless intro video. Unit sprites, country-specific graphics, all pretty basic things, English, music, sounds. If you're new to Darkest Hour, this is going to be kind of important. When you first load up the launcher, down at the bottom right, it's going to say load a mod, and by default, it's going to say Darkest Hour Full. And now, this is what I'm going to use to start the game. Darkest Hour Full just means you're playing Darkest Hour with the full amount of content related to this version of the game. Darkest Hour is actually a sort of enhanced version of Hearts of Iron 2. So you want to start with this. If you have mods or other things that you want to play using Darkest Hour, they're going to show up here depending on what mods you have installed. Kaiserreich is a very popular mod. In fact, it's the most popular mod for Darkest Hour there is. Anytime Darkest Hour gets mentioned on the Paradox Plaza subreddit on Reddit, it is always accompanied by people saying, get Kaiserreich. It is really awesome. I don't think it's perfect for someone learning the game just because it deviates so much from history that it's kind of hard to latch on to events that you might understand from, you know, knowing history or being familiar with that kind of thing. I have a bunch of other mods in here. They're not really important to go over. Just for now, focus on Darkest Hour Full. You can use Darkest Hour Light, and what that's going to do is give you Hearts of Iron 2 with some of the quality of life improvements of Darkest Hour. And if you choose None, which this is sort of the counterintuitive thing here, if you select None, you will get basically just Hearts of Iron 2 by itself, which may not actually be what you actually want to have, right? It's probably, if you're playing this game, you want Darkest Hour Full. So I'll go ahead and start the game up, and it should load pretty quick. Okay, sorry about that. I wanted to turn down the music because it tends to get really loud, and when you're streaming, it's going to overpower my own voice, and I don't want to. Deal with that necessarily. So real quick, I'm just going to hop back out of the game so we can get back to the title menu. So at the title menu, you will see at the top right, obviously, Darkest Hour, your version. My code here, my hash may not be correct, but I do have debug enabled. So the purpose of that is if the game crashes, I can get more information about why it crashed. I can show you potentially later in another stream or video how to do that. It's really, really easy. So this is how the game pops up, right? There are tutorials. Now the thing about these tutorials is that they do cover kind of the basics, but it's so much just scratching the surface. You're really not learning as much as you could be learning, either watching a video or watching somebody else play. The basics of warfare, basics of production, research, diplomacy, and government, advanced warfare. It is even the advanced warfare one is really basic. The advanced warfare tutorial involves a sort of micro scenario where you're moving units and making attacks in the Pacific Ocean, in sort of a United States versus the Empire of Japan type of scenario. But the problem with the tutorials are they teach you these things in a vacuum, and what's really tough and what has been kind of hard for me to play through and really enjoy is, how do you make these things work in concert? And that tends to be one of the big challenges is, how are you going to, if you're Germany, how are you going to conduct all these things? Looks like someone may be having a problem viewing the stream. Hopefully it's not bad for other folks. I'm just checking my Reddit messages, and it looks like someone's having an issue. Anyway, sorry about that. I think I'm talking to myself here because nobody's actually watching the stream, but might as well get back into it. Okay, so what we're actually going to try to do here is get into the actual game. And so if I hit, single player, what it's going to do is bring up a number of scenarios. Now, if you're at all familiar with Paradox games, what these are equivalent to are the start dates. And each one is going to be a little bit different, and what types of actions are going on, where are units, what are the current fronts of the war. For instance, if you start in 1936, it's before the war starts. If you are going to start in 1944 at the Gotterdammerung, I hope I said that right, but probably didn't. If you use that start date, it's going to be in a very different position. It's late in the war, or at least a good chunk into the war. And Germany's going to have a much harder time if you're playing as Germany, for instance. What's really nice about Darkest Hour compared to other Hearts of Iron games is that there is a Great War scenario, a 1914 World War I scenario. So rather than the Third Reich, you have the German Empire, and so on and so forth. And you can play this out. Some folks will say that it's not a great match for what World War I gameplay should be like, or maybe would be like, and I've kind of heard it argued both ways. Victoria 2 doesn't do it great, Hearts of Iron doesn't do it great. But it is interesting. It is a lot of fun to mess around in that, though. Again, unless you're good, it matters less. What most folks will say is the best place to start as a new player is the Road to Another War 1936 start date. So this is, a few years prior to the invasion of Poland. And if you play really any nation, what this should do is give you time to prepare for war and kind of decide, what kind of army you're going to have and what you're going to do and general strategies, and kind of get that set up, get the alliances established, who are you going to fight with? Are you going to just try to get on some other country's good side and hope you don't end up on the opposite end of the conflict? Whatever. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with that scenario. I'm going to go with Germany. I'm not going to read through that, but if you want to, it's there in game. Basically just describing, what's the state of Germany at this point and what happened with Adolf Hitler's ascension to power, becoming chancellor and all that good stuff. So you're not limited to just the countries in this top bar. These are sort of the countries that, I guess the devs kind of consider to be the most interesting or the countries that had a bigger part to play in World War II. Obviously these will change depending on what scenario you pick. Obviously you can see each one changes. Since we are just going to go with Germany, we'll stick with that. You can also choose beyond the countries on this list. So if you right-click a flag, you'll actually see a whole list of every nation that's currently available. This fire truck just went past my apartment. Any nation that was existing in this time, or roughly every country that was existing in this time. So, you could play as Iran, you could play as Manchukuo, you could play as Nepal. They may not be very fun, but you can do it. So again, we're going to play as Germany. If you go into options, there are a couple of different things. Difficulty, I'm going to keep that to normal. AI aggressiveness, I'm going to keep to normal. Game speed, normal. Share countries, I'm going to leave off for now. That's the default. Autosave monthly, use counters. This is a big sticking point. Most people use counters. I actually prefer sprites just because I'm stuck in the mindset of playing Europa Universalis and Victoria and Crusader Kings, where I see our little guys walking around the map. But I'm going to turn counters on for this, just because it'll be, I assume, easier on the eyes, and folks can maybe understand that more. Everyone can start war. I'll leave that as off. End date, use end scenario date. The rest of these, they don't really matter for the moment. So, yeah. Should be good, and we'll start. Okay, so first things first, when the game pops up, I'm going to hurry up and just hit pause, so that after I click out of these first couple of dialog boxes, it doesn't start running, because there's a couple of things I'm going to want to do. So first of all, game objective summary, standard scenario, the faction with the most victory points on such and such a time, 1963, will win this game. So as opposed to Hearts of Iron 3 or maybe other Hearts of Iron games, this game, instead of ending around 1948 or 1950 something, it goes all the way to 1963. So you get, if you decided to start a game in 1914, you actually would have a good 50 odd years of gameplay, which is a lot for this game anyway. So, we're starting 1936, so we still get, a good couple of decades of gameplay in here. You can check the detailed victory point standing at any time by pressing F6, go to page 1. Basically, that's just saying let's go to the ledger, the statistics. Now, victory points, what that means is, besides just winning the war outright by making the opposing faction surrender, what you can do is, if the war is relatively inconclusive, basically at that end date, it's going to tally up the victory points. And what that means is, out of the provinces in the game, and obviously if you played a Paradox game, you're familiar with how they have things divided up by province, but some of these provinces are considered more important than others, and they're considered the victory points. So in a sort of Broadway, the more areas you control, the bigger your borders, the more parts of the earth, so to speak, that you're in control of, the more likely you're going to have victory points. And if the war does not end conclusively, because it's a computer game, and obviously there needs to be some sort of winner, it is going to give you your standing in that term. So the more victory points you have, you will be considered winner by default at that point, or your faction will be, whether you're part of the Axis powers, the Allies, or the Comintern. There is, I'm going to go ahead and hit start game, because we don't really need that. Hints, they sometimes come up. You can increase the game speed by using control in plus or minus. It's kind of straightforward. Policy briefing, sir. Our policy can be changed. I'm going to close this, but what this means is I have a chance to modify my government and the bonuses and penalties that come with that. I believe it's every year. I think it's every year, or maybe it's every 6 months or so. You get another notification that's like this saying you are allowed to shift your government one click in a certain direction, and I'll show that in a few minutes. And this is what that's related to. The following decisions are now available. Issue currency, ersatz conversion, purge of the army, reoccupation of the Rhineland, anti-Comintern pact, repudiate the Locarno treaties, prolong terms of service, enact partial mobilization. So what this means is these are tied up in the decisions. So up here in this toolbar, if you go to the second button from the left, it's the view decisions. If you click that, that's what you're going to get. You're going to see these different decisions. Now, if you played any other Paradox games, the idea behind these is very similar to the decisions you can take in Europa Universalis or the decision you can take in Victoria. They are basically events, predetermined events, that will be able to be taken by the user, an optional event, so to speak, that has certain prerequisites that must be met, and then by taking it, you'll get certain benefits. Some of them can be, are just straight up a great idea, usually. Some of them may not be. You can see, if you put your mouse over them, it will describe this. So issue currency. Our monetary authority can print new money to solve our budget problems without having to borrow money. However, this may lead to an increase of inflation, which could give some problems to our industry. So national descent is changed by -1%. Money increased by $1,000 or 1,000 money, and industrial efficiency goes down by 1%. Just an example. We are ready to make this decision, so if you actually put your cursor over the little left box, it's going to say what those prerequisites are. In this case, we have less than 100 money, so we can take it. Ersatz conversion, for instance, we have an X. It says we are not ready to take this. We need at least 50 money, so we have that. We need at least 10,000 energy, which we do not have, and we are below 10,000 rare materials. So presumably at some point, we could take this if we had a lot of energy or we accumulated a lot of energy. So we'll look at this in a little bit. I'm really not sure at this point in the game what would be good decisions to take. I really don't know. Just not really sure about that. So anyway, now that we cleared up the dialogue boxes, just to get sort of back in the zone here of the game proper. So this is the world in 1936. Obviously, things should look relatively familiar if you're used to reading a history book. Big red blob over here, that's the Soviet Union, clearly. We're going to need to worry about him, I think, eventually, not at the moment. Here's France. We're going to shit all over France, hopefully, at some point. But here is our German nation here. Right now, I have our sort of selection on Berlin. It is our capital, clearly. Right now, the game is showing you the location of all of our units. We've got guys kind of strewn about all over the place. this is really early in the game, and this is about the only time you're actually going to see things like this, because once the game gets started, and we are actually in combat, this isn't like Europa Universalis or Victoria, where you have your units and you're kind of sending them all over the map to different provinces, and they're running all over each other's borders, and you're putting areas at siege and all of that. It doesn't work that way in this game. There are sort of the fronts of the war, and what will happen is all of these units are going to be stacked up against the border. Just prior to war with Poland, we will have a bunch of units in Stolp, in Krona, Deutsche Krona, Meseritz, Liegnitz, Opeln, Gleiwitz, and Waldenburg. We'll probably have a whole bunch of units all along this border, so that you have a total connected front of units. I'm not sure if we even get that far in this session, but we'll see. So like any Paradox game, and I'm kind of giving this, review of the game mechanics, assuming you've played some of the Paradox games, you're going to have sort of the ribbon in the top left, these sort of menu bars and different kind of sections to really examine for gameplay purposes. So, the first basic one over here on the left is just view map. That's almost inactive the entire time. You have your resources here at the top, so energy, metal, rare materials, oil, supplies, and money. It's money. Looks like a pound symbol, so I don't know if it's pounds, but it's money. Manpower, nuclear bombs, which we're going to have none for a while. Descent, which we have none, which is good. Transport capacity, and our industrial capacity. We'll try to get into each of those in turn in a second. If you click anywhere on a province, it's going to show you a neat little picture that is supposed to be some representation of that province. Some of them are kind of neat, Whether you're looking at somewhere in Germany or somewhere out here, it's all kind of... It's kind of neat to see the different way they're representing these provinces. So it's going to give you the picture. It's also going to give you information like what is the crossing like between its neighboring provinces, what are the size of the air bases, what are the sizes of the naval bases, size of the rocket test sites, size of nuclear reactor, radar stations, anti-aircraft guns, size of land fortifications. I think I actually just started building these things, so that probably wasn't a great idea to do right now, but coastal fortifications, current industrial capacity, this is sort of representing what factories are in what provinces, the infrastructure, partisan activity, and then how valuable this province is in terms of resources. So this is saying that Hanover is producing daily metal production is 48.3. Kind of self-explanatory here. It also tell you what units are in this province, if any. And hopefully, we can get into more depth of these things and how to manipulate them. Again, I'm not a genius at this game, so it kind of is hard for me to make complete sense of what you should be doing in the very start of the game. I'm not sure. When you play a game at a later start date or a different start, things are sort of arranged in a way that you could kind of play off of immediately, but a lot of these, I think the assumption is if you start in 1936, you can arrange things the way they should be. If you join a game or you start a game in a later start date, you're going to have to do a lot of finagling to get things in what would probably be considered the optimum setup. So, energy, metal, rare materials. Ideally, you want to have these coming in as much as possible. Right now, I'm losing energy, so I'm using up the energy that I currently have. My production is less than my consumption. Metal, daily change, well, it says 0. The thing is, the game's paused, so nothing's actually been producing. So all of these, almost like, you know, it's frozen in time, right? So we don't actually see anything here. Rare materials. Oil. Oil's going to become really important. So right now I have 1,000 oil. That can disappear very swiftly. Because things like airplanes and tanks, well, they use the oil. Your tanks can actually run out of oil, and then they become effectively useless, and you don't want that to happen. So it's really important to keep an eye on your resources and make sure that you have enough to operate. You know, how do you get more resources? Well, the more provinces you own, the more you're going to gather per day. It's really important. Some places produce oil better than others. So, for instance, you know, I was watching JJ Merrill's stream earlier yesterday. It was really important that he held on to these couple of provinces over here, because this province of Bacau produces oil. So it was really, for him, one of the few resources of oil he had for his German Empire. Let's see, supplies, money, manpower. Manpower represents every able-bodied male in your population. So you can bottom out on manpower, and this is, you know, saying, well, you know, no other men in the army. You ran out. Sorry, I'm very low at the moment. I only have 124. How you increase this is via mobilization, and I'll get to that eventually. But know that you don't want to bottom out here. It's very important. You know, if you've played Europa Universalis 4 and you ever ran out of manpower, you know the pain, right? You can't reinforce your army. Same way, if you don't have manpower and your units are low on strength, they don't have as many men in the divisions, they're not going to replenish. And then you're talking about a weakened army force. You don't want that. Nuclear bombs. Eventually you will have the technology and the resources to produce nuclear bombs. You can build them, and then this will keep ticking up as you build more and more and more until you start using them. Descent, this is basically representing rebels in a way. So the higher your descent, the worse of a situation it is for you. And I think there's some threshold, like 50 or 51% descent, which will cause your country to collapse or something very similar to that. Have not had this happen to me yet, so it could be worse, it could be better, I don't know. So hopefully, you know, we won't come to that, but certain things will lower your descent, certain things will raise your descent. Hopefully that won't be a problem. So transport capacity, this is a sort of a more advanced concept. So transport capacity represents trucks, trains, and river barges. When available, TC is overloaded, divisions move and regain organization more slowly. TC is a direct function of industrial capacity, IC. Each point of industrial capacity gives you 1.5 transport capacity. It says used transport capacity 47, available 374. And the rest of these things are modifiers on that. The basic idea is the more industrial capacity you have, the more things you can do. That's really what it boils down to in terms of your economy. So more industrial capacity means more transport capacity, which means our units, our men, our everything can move around the battle lines across countries much more swiftly. So we do want that. If we max that out, saying, you know, we're over 374, meaning we're trying to move too many things at a given time, then we're going to suffer for that. Industrial capacity is the production capacity of your industries. Base industrial capacity is the amount of IC in your provinces. Available IC is the base total modified by technology, ministers, etc. Wasted IC is the amount allocated in excess of need. Each IC needs 2 energy, 1 metal, and half a rare material every day. So this is saying I have some wasted, I have some available base. So my base is 150 from all my provinces that I have. I get an additional, what looks like 12 out of the fact that we have certain technology and ministers, and then the wasted, I could be using 16 industrial capacity apparently. I'm not quite a genius on that yet, so I can't say whether or not I'm going to use that 16 and it's going to stop being wasted. I guess I'll find out. So yeah, what you really want to do is have all these things be green. Obviously we don't have that. We have relatively low manpower, it looks like. We are losing money. We are losing energy. You can trade surplus resources with your allies and other nations to get the resources that you may need. Again, I'm not an expert on that area yet either, but we'll see. Now these other major tabs here, statistics, this is equivalent to the ledgers from other Paradox games. It gives you information, a variety of information. The only one right now that I'm probably cared about is wondering, okay, well, what's our victory progress? This is saying what victory points am I actually in control of. It's saying Germany owns 13. You can sort and see that apparently the United States is in control of the most at 25. Soviet Union at 20, United Kingdom 19, 17. So we're not the top in terms of victory progress. We probably want to have a lot more. That's going to mean conquering, right? That's sort of the point of the game. Diplomacy, this is sort of where you also look at your own government information and the government information of other nations, as well as interact with other nations. So first clicking here for the first time in the game, it's going to show Germany. We are National Socialist. We have a belligerence of 0, but I think that'll always say that because that's the belligerence in comparison to you. So if I looked at another nation, it may have a number under belligerence. That is the level of, you know, how unhappy we are with that nation, what may cause us to go to war. We have a non-aggression pact with Turkey. We have a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union currently. We have a non-aggression pact with Poland. That won't last. We have a non-aggression pact with Austria. We are leader of the Axis, which at the moment is just us. Over here you can sort the different nations you see. So Axis is just me. Allies consists of Australia, Belgium, Canada, Egypt, France, Nepal, New Zealand, Union of South Africa, and the United Kingdom. Comintern, Mongolian People's Republic, Soviet Union, Tanu Tuva. Let's see, we're guaranteeing the independence of Italy, Denmark, and Switzerland. We have territorial claims on the United Kingdom, France, Italy, Japan, all sorts of people. Territorial claims are sort of a way for us to have that sort of casus belli idea from the other games, meaning, you know, there are some parts of the world where we say, well, that should belong to us. Over here is where you would see the actual diplomatic actions that you can take. So if I clicked on Soviet Union here, along with all of their information, they're a Stalinist state. Our relation with them is a flat 0. Our belligerence with them is 0. Here are all the things they have. We can open negotiations with them. We can cancel our non-aggression pact. We can guarantee their independence. These other items are grayed out. There could be a number of factors as to why that is. We can't just straight up declare war on them yet. We need a higher belligerence, I believe. We have a non-aggression pact with them, right? So if I canceled that, we could maybe declare war on them. I think we may need to do a few other things to be able to do that. Then you have your actual ministers, so sort of like you know, your advisors, your counselors from other Paradox Plaza games. These individuals are historical figures. Obviously, we've got Adolf Hitler as our head of state, and all of these folks that if you are a student of history, you may recognize some names. There are 10 different minister positions: head of state, foreign minister, minister of security, chief of staff, blah, blah, blah. Easy to see. But if I put my mouse over Hitler here, it's going to give, one, a little bit of information. So Adolf Hitler is a National Socialist. He is a paranoid megalomaniac. Who would have thunk? Adolf Hitler was an Austrian-born German politician and leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, commonly known as the Nazi Party. He became absolute dictator of Germany in 1934 with the title of Chancellor from 1933, and with the title head of state, Führer und Reichskanzler from 1934 onwards. And so that huge list of modifiers there represent what Adolf Hitler brings to the table for our nation. So we have foreign ICUs minus 10%, manpower growth plus 10%, units organization regain plus 10%. I'm not going to read through all these right now, but we're not likely to see our head of state change, or at least for a while. So we're going to be stuck with Adolf Hitler, for probably quite a long time. That's just the way it's going to be. There is a retirement date. You can see at the very bottom of this box saying retirement January 1999. So if we had expanded the scenario date, or we changed the game or modded the game, and we were going to play the scenario all the way to like the year 2000 or something, in January 1999, Adolf Hitler would, I assume this means he's going to pass away then. So he would effectively be replaced by somebody else. We can't actually do anything to change Hitler right now. The rest of these ministers we can, though. So Rudolf Hess, he is a National Socialist. He is a silent workhorse. Silent workhorse compensates for his lack of charisma with hard work and competence. He rarely takes pride of place, instead letting the head of state shine in the sun while he gets the job done. Oh, what a nice guy. He gives a bonus to industrial capacity, production, and diplomatic costs. Oh, so diplomatic costs do increase, so that's not necessarily a great thing, but okay. Well, say maybe we wanted to get rid of this guy. Oh, we can't. I can't click on him. Okay, we'll choose somebody else here for a second. Maybe decide that Erich Raeder, Chief of the Navy. Well, maybe I don't like these bonuses. He's got a whole list here, but I do have alternatives, or at least in this case, one alternative. I could go with Alfred Salvachter. He has a different set of bonuses, and you can kind of see real quick, even just looking at the top summary of these scroll bars, the very first thing you see here is that this guy, the guy who we have in now, provides a bonus to battleship combat. So battleship offensive combat modifier, heavy cruiser, light cruiser. But you can see in there the carrier offensive and carrier defense are actually negative 10%. So sort of, you could see this guy saying, if you're going to go with this guy, your Navy is going to be centered around battleships. Conversely, this guy, who seemingly has bonuses to carriers, and a negative to submarines, so, if you go with this guy, you're going to be setting up your Navy around carriers, and you do have the choice. So in this game, it's not like, say, Europa Universalis, where you build one of 4 different kinds of boats and that's really it. You can center your Navy around different types, and so going with that, if we wanted to stick with this guy, we'd want to build more battleships than battleships and heavy cruisers and light cruisers, more than any other type of boat, or ship rather. And we would probably want to focus our technology around battleships and not waste technology on increasing our carriers, because we're likely not to use them, especially with our minus 10% carrier effectiveness on the combat modifiers. I'm not smart enough to know if I should change any of the ministers right now. I'm going to assume that what I have here is good enough to start. But again, you usually have a choice. If you click on the picture and nothing pops up, that means you can't currently change who that minister is. If you click and it does pop up here, obviously you have that choice. Different ministers have expiration dates and availability dates, so at some point, a lot of these guys say that their retirement is January 1999. That is a modifiable value, I think, but what will potentially happen is ministers have availability dates and the retirement dates. So at some point in the future, we may be able to have a different minister who was not available at the outset of the game, and choose him instead. And whether or not we would choose him, well, I guess that's going to depend on where we're at in the game. The sliders here are kind of interesting. This is about as close to dictating your government, your internal government, as you can. So the very first two sliders are probably the most important in terms of what your government is. The Darkest Hour manual, which is included in the game install, you can find in the game folders of your installation, and the Steam subfolder, Darkest Hour subfolder. There is the manual. You can also find it in the forums. I think there's a link out there somewhere. Has some really good graphs to illustrate, what are the implications of being democratic versus authoritarian, political left versus political right. To give you sort of a preview of what this really means, clearly, because we're National Socialist Germany, we're very authoritarian. By being very authoritarian, we're effectively a dictatorship. Our dissent growth is minus 10%, so we're apparently oppressive enough on our populace that they're not going to dissent very much. Our partisan activity is up, so that might be a nuance that I don't fully understand. I think it may have to do with if you take over enemy territory. If I conquer France, there will be French partisans who wish to, they're the resistance to the German occupation. So because we're such dickheads, because we're dictators, our partisan activity is going to be increased, but our local dissent for our populace is going to be reduced. And if we release a puppet, so if we make a nation like Vichy France a puppet government, they'll also have some dissent increase. If you were to move down the line, we would actually see different things, right? So that dialog box I had earlier that said, we can change our policy slider by 1 tick. I could move us more towards democratic type of country, right? If I do that, the modifiers will change, as it shows here. Declaration of war dissent will go up, release puppet dissent will go down compared to what we have now, our dissent growth will go down. There are benefits to being democratic, there are benefits to being authoritarian. Similarly, political left and right may have some impacts. It is seemingly, from at least what the tooltip is saying, that, all this is going to govern is what ministers you have to choose over here. So if you become more political left rather than political right, we're more likely to have like communists or free market type of folks available as ministers. And your government type, which like right now ours is National Socialist, is based on where you're at on these two sliders. So these two sliders are really the most important when determining that government type. So if I moved more towards democratic and kept the political right, I would be like social conservative. If I moved to the political left and kept my authoritarian, I would slowly transform into a Stalinist or Leninist communist government. I'm probably not going to make any big changes here. I'm going to stay National Socialist Germany for the duration of the game, but if I wanted to, I could slowly over time change the nation that Germany is. The idea that this government is slowly changing, acts are being passed, laws are being passed. Adolf Hitler would not willingly give up power, so I'm not going to be clicking those things, but you could. There is a cheat code you could put in with the console called Freedom. If you put that in, you can actually freely change any of these. So if for whatever reason you wanted to start the game and really play alternate history, you could just come in here, mess with the sliders, and be Communist Germany from the get-go. That's kind of interesting. Play things a little bit differently. Your ministers will be different. There's even a way to transform this into a paternal autocrat. I forget the exact settings here to make it, but that's assuming you're back to being a monarchy, in which case your head of state will be Wilhelm II, I think, is what it will default to. But anyway, these will likely stay the same. Then you have open and closed society. So this is saying, this bar, as you can see in the tooltip, this bar shows the government's views on societal freedom. Defenders of open society want to increase freedom at the expense of equality and order, and the proponents of closed society want to decrease it in favor of either equality or order. We're relatively closed, so that means we have, again, those modifiers: dissent growth, tech team salary. So we pay less money for our tech team. That's a good thing, potentially. Dissent in national provinces, heavily reduced. Dissent in occupied provinces, heavily increased. Army counterintelligence, heavily increased. And domestic counterintelligence, slightly increased. So, again, it's not necessarily one spot on the slider is going to be better than others. What it really comes down to is what do you think is going to be better at the time you're playing. Central planning, obviously, free market versus central planning. These have things. So right now I'm about middle of the road, so my upgrade costs are a little bit more expensive, upgrade time's a little more expensive, but I pay less for my tech teams, and so that maybe is something I'll change. Maybe I'll start heading towards central planning, or maybe I'll scale back because I don't want to, the upgrade costs, I don't want those to be expensive. Mobilization versus demobilization, you actually cannot change these on your own. These are governed by those decisions that you can take, freely able to take. So it'll say like partial mobilization. Well, that'll take you closer to the mobilized end of this sphere. That will increase your manpower. So we're relatively low on manpower. I may want to look into mobilization so that I have more able-bodied men to supply my armies. Hawk lobby versus dove lobby. This is sort of governing, how much does your government actually want to go to war? Right now, sort of middle of the road, leaning towards hawk lobby. If I move towards this, it's going to say that our dissent growth is reduced. Our production times are going to be reduced, sort of reflecting that, we're supporting our industry by building more things. We want to build more things for the war effort that we want to have because we're hawkish. And then interventionism versus isolationism. This is sort of dictating, how involved we get with the matters of other nations. What is our view on world politics? So if you're isolationist, this sort of be like the United States pre-World War I and II. Interventionism, probably United States today, very interventionist, getting involved in a lot of different things. I'm probably going to leave all of these mostly the same for right now. I do have the opportunity to click one way if I wanted to, and when I do that, I'll then be able to do it again a year, I think, after that. I think you get a new opportunity every year. So you could potentially, over a span of like 8 years, move one bar completely one way or the other or so. There are checkboxes here. If you click that, that just means whenever your slider movement is available, it's just automatically going to go to this, and it's going to go in the direction that you put the box. So if I wanted to be hawk lobby, I could force it to always keep ticking towards maximum hawk lobby. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep them reminding me that a policy can be changed as I go, and then again with the diplomacy, you can start talking with other nations, right? I can declare war on Hungary right now if I wanted to. Probably wouldn't be a great idea at this point. I can open negotiations. I can trade blueprints. So I have a lot of technology that Hungary apparently does not have. I could give them dive boat, for instance. Chance 0. So you wouldn't just take this gift. That's odd. I wonder why not. I just give it to you, man. I can just give it to you for free. I'm not going to actually do any of that, again, because I'm still relatively new to the game. I don't know what the best opening moves are. I know that some events are going to start firing as the time moves on, so there are a number of events that are tied up historically. They will kick off around certain dates and times that they did historically, and they will give us options. There are historical options, there are non-historical options, and that will kind of steadily push us towards World War II, I think. So that may end up actually dictating to us, who we're going to ally first. I could start working with folks now. For instance, one thing I could try to do is, the United States are going to be a big problem eventually. I could potentially try to get on their good side. Right now our relations with them are a little bit negative, so that may not work out really great, but I could try to do something. I could just declare war, again, probably not a great idea. I could guarantee their independence. I'm not sure if that would make them like me any. Let's see. That's going to take time to respond when I unpause the game, but we'll see what happens there. Again, you can sort by area and type and, alliances, but there's not a whole lot we can do. We can see where they are at, so, a United States, USA, social liberal. They're really far on the Democratic side. They're sort of middle-leaning left, very open society, very free market, very demobilized. They're looking for peace. They're very isolationist. So Pearl Harbor hasn't happened yet. So they're all about just hanging out. They're not going to do much. Compared to Soviet Union, very political left, but very far right. Very closed society, central planning, middle of the way. Very different. Right, they got Joseph Stalin in power. He's going to be interesting. There may be some things going on there that we'll have to deal with. And I think that's all for diplomacy for now. Real quick, I'm going to check the stream chat just in case. I had it turned off for a while. I don't see anything. Alright, pop back in game. Okay, so I'm going to pop over now to the economy tab. This is one I'm really not smart about. There's a lot here to understand. Excuse me. So, this economy, which honestly, in my opinion, it should probably be called like the production tab, represents your... we talk about like industrial capacity, which is something you want to have a good bit of. This is where that really starts to impact things, or how you can deal with that. So the big main pain over here is showing what is actually in production right now. So right now I'm building some heavy cruisers, I'm building some battle cruisers, I'm building some destroyers, I'm building some subs. I'm recruiting and forming up some infantry divisions, as well as some mobilized divisions, or motorized infantry. I'm also building some forts, convoy escorts, and the anti-aircraft guns and land fort. I accidentally clicked that earlier when I was clicking around the map, so I did start these. I'm going to cancel them real quick, because I didn't have them by default. Now, I would imagine folks who are knowledgeable about the game may look at this and say, well, you're wasting industrial capacity on building these things, and they would likely restructure what's being built here. I'm not smart enough to do that yet, so I may just let these things complete and go from there. Obviously, ships, infantry, these are all units that will control on the map. The land forts and such, these will just improve the provinces that they're in. So Saarbrücken, Freiburg, Mainz, they will have their land fort increased via size, which will give it defensive bonuses and different things. The convoy escorts, if I remember correctly, when we build these, it's going to impact over here where it says convoys, and basically you have convoys that move resources from the provinces that they're being built in to your resource depots. We currently have 2 resource depots. We have one in Berlin, and it has really what looks like the vast majority of our resources that we see up here at the top of the screen. We also have one in Königsberg, and we barely have anything in there. Again, because I have not unpaused the game, I would expect that to increase over time, potentially. And in order to move those resources around, we need convoys. If I clicked here, so convoys running 0 out of 1. We have one that would go from Stolp to Königsberg. This convoy needs at least 8 transports to operate properly. It has none at the moment. So we're going to build these convoy transports and these convoy escorts. This convoy needs at least 8 transports to operate properly. So what we would do is, once we've built these convoy transports, the convoy escorts and the convoy transports, we would assign them to these different convoys running. Now this is largely going to be automated, so I have these check boxes marked by default. This is what they are like. They will manage this automatically. So unless you really wanted to get in depth and micromanaging all this stuff, I would just leave it alone for now. No reason to deal with that quite yet. So, you know, as this changes, this will update. Here are the trade agreements we currently have going. So looks like we're exporting supplies to Sweden in exchange for metal, and we're giving energy in for supply. That's interesting. So we're giving energy to Italy, they're giving us some supply, then we're giving more supply to Sweden to get more metal. Interesting. I would imagine, yeah, so you can automate trade, you can sort of, you know, give it some very broad directions in terms of what you want to be trading and what you want to stockpile. So, you know, if I stockpiled money, I would make sure I'm not, that's, you know, let's say stockpile oil. I don't want to import or I don't want to export oil. I want to stockpile oil. So any oil that I get, I want to keep in reserve, for instance. This is one of those things that, you know, I'm going to leave trade on auto just because, you know, if you want to micromanage it, it probably is going to take a certain amount of understanding about the game mechanics that I just do not have at the moment. And most folks that I've seen playing this game, usually it looks like leave it on auto unless they want to make a very specific trade agreement. Maybe they're bottoming out on oil, they have no oil left, and for whatever reason the AI is just not doing it. They may try to set up manually a trade agreement for oil. That's something that could happen. And then in the upper right, this is sort of giving us, again, a tally of our resources and what's happening here. We do have this check marked saying, enabling this will allow energy to oil conversion as long as there is enough energy. So we are turning energy into oil. I'm going to leave that check mark because we don't have a lot of oil. 1,000 oil will go quick once we start having mechanized units and we start moving mechanized units and planes and all that fun stuff. So I will turn energy into oil, even though at the moment I am seemingly losing out on energy over time. Then we have industrial capacity, right? So again, I talked about this a little bit before. This is the industrial ability of your country to do things. You obviously want to have a lot of this. The more industrial capacity you have, the more things you can build, the more things you can do, basically. It is basically the thing you would like to protect in all cases by having good factories. Factories will provide more industrial capacity, so you can spend industrial capacity on factories that will increase industrial capacity. But when we have this, so, you know, we have the furthest number over here is the base. That's all the industrial capacity we get from our provinces. The middle number is the modified amount. So this is the real industrial capacity we actually have. That gets modified by the ministers that we have, the technology that you have. And then I'm apparently wasting 24, which means 24 of my available 162 is going unused. Ideally, you don't want to be wasting any industrial capacity. You want to put it somewhere so you're making use of it somehow. These sliders dictate what you do with that industrial capacity. So, you know, right now we're giving 64.8 to consumer goods. It does tell us how much we need, so we are providing more. So if you're providing more than what you need, that means you're creating consumer goods in overabundance. That's actually, if you can afford it, a good thing in some ways. It keeps your populace happy. I'm not really concerned about that at the moment, so I'm going to... that's close enough. I could try to really game it down to exactly the number, but that's good enough. You probably saw that as I moved this guy, the other sliders move in response to it. It's because that is representing the fact that we have a maximum amount of capacity. That means there is a maximum extent that all of these sliders could be going at any given time. So production, so we need 8.4, so we need at least that much to be building anything, but I have a lot more allocated to that. What this means is, if I allocate more things to production, the current things I have in my production queue over here I believe they will be produced faster. So if I really wanted to go balls out and try to produce things much more quickly, I could try to crank this up. But I only need 8.4, so I'm not sure what would be the very best option here to take. Supplies, this is the supplies for your army. You usually want to keep this meeting your needs because if you have low supplies, your army is eventually going to start running out of the supplies they need to function properly. Their organization and their strength will dwindle, and they will start losing combat very easily. Reinforcements, this will determine the rate in which your units, as they lose strength, replenish that strength, and how your units will recover from battles in which they've lost men. We need 104, so I guess that means we need a lot of reinforcements. We may not be able to afford it, is the one problem. I could try to crank this out to what we need, but we're going to be losing out in a lot of other places. So that's a problem. If I right-click on one of these scroll bars, it's going to freeze it. So, if we needed 104, I'm going to crank it up to 111. That means I can play with this a little bit more. So, okay, I only need, this. I'll freeze that, and then, let's see. I'll make this so my consumer goods are right. And then I'll make the supplies right. Oh, apparently I've used up all my IC. I can't automate it. If I automated it, it would basically, the AI would choose for us what would be a good balanced approach. So it's going to give everything that we need. So consumer goods, just what we need. Production, just what we need. Supplies, a little bit more than what we need. Enough to get our reinforcements, but we're not doing any upgrades. So I may have researched a better version of infantry so that our infantry is better equipped and has better combat efficiency, but the units out in the field will not actually benefit from that technology unless they are upgraded. And so apparently we need a crap load of industrial capacity assigned to upgrades in order to get all of our guys upgraded. It's not a really big deal right now. We're not at war. It doesn't matter. So I may actually go with this, what the AI has given us. That's fine. I don't have any wasted industrial capacity. That's good. So that's a decent start. When it comes to actually building things, if I add more things to the production queue, it's going to increase our need for production. So I kind of have to balance that. If I say, well, I'm not going to build any of these guys, I don't want to deal with that. That's going to lower our production need, and the AI will work with that. So I think this is just a waste of my time. I'm not going to build a navy because the British Royal Navy will likely just rip it to shreds. I can reduce my production need and take them out of the queue. Of course, I can change that by adding more units. Build airplanes, I can build ships. This is actually one area where I know very little about in terms of what are the best units to build, and what kind of attachments to have, and all these different things. I will need help with this from somebody. So if anyone's watching, or if there is a guru out there, I would appreciate help and input. Technology is separated into a number of different categories. As you can see, it's all sort of based on years, so very similar to sort of what you would see in maybe Victoria 2, where technologies do have dates that are tied to them. We have infantry that are of 1931. We can research 1936. Probably would like to do that. It is 1936. But there's a lot of different things, and this is sort of overwhelming to me, is the number of different technologies that are available. I mean, there's just a crap load. It's just insane. There's so many to choose from. What are the best choices? I don't know. But it's certainly worth investigating, or at least, someone maybe can help me out here in trying to decide what are the best techs to go with. Now, how you actually research these is you have tech teams. So here, if I click that, it's going to give me a list of tech teams. These are the either companies or famous scientists or persons who are capable of doing the research into these different types of advancements. Some of them are companies, so let's see if I can find one that folks recognize. The Junkers is one that I've heard of elsewhere. Let's see, Rheinmetall, Porsche. Hey, Porsche. There we go. Porsche, right? Porsche. There might be some other ones that people, Werner von Braun, right? Now, historically, made rockets. Surely enough, he does rocketry, aeronautics, and technical efficiency. These little icons, by the name, dictate what things they specialize in, right? So if I have somebody, or let's say a company like the Junkers, they're all about general equipment, that's cool, aeronautics, aircraft testing, munitions, and bomber design. So the Junkers, whether or not you're familiar with history or this organization, you can tell that they probably specialize in aeronautical things, right? Aircraft and air doctrines are likely winners for what we'd want them to be researching, right? Let's have a skill level, skill 7. So skill 7, that's pretty good. But the higher the skill level for a tech team, the more expensive they are to maintain the research. So, there is sort of a balance you could try to make and say, well, I'm not going to employ the most expensive folks because I'm low on money or something. But I'm going to guess most of the time you're going to want the best skills for what you got. It just seems like that's probably the best, the best way to go about it, I guess. Now, something to keep in mind. So, if I wanted to research 1939 combat engineers, I apparently cannot. But if I wanted to, I can see the requirements. So it needs general equipment, management, chemistry, training. So these are the broad things that we would like, the things that this technology will require to finish, or at least get it quickly. What you do is you want to match that up. So if I have this tech highlighted before I hit Start Project, and I get my list of tech teams over here, I can look, and these green highlighted icons are going to say, hey, this is tied to the technology you're looking to research. Ideally, what you want is you want to find the tech team that has the most outlined green tech teams and a high skill. So IG Farben, excuse my terrible German accents when trying to say German things. This has 3 icons. It does have chemistry, it does have general equipment, it does have management, and we need all of those things to be able to research this. And it has skill 9. That's very high. So if we wanted to get 1939 engineers, IG Farben would be the perfect candidate. This team is going to require $0.18 each day. That's an abstraction, obviously. We're not paying them 18 cents when working on the project. So if I hit Start Project, what will happen is this bar will slowly fill up, and the breakdown is down here. So it's going to slowly fill these things up one at a time, providing, or at least multiple, it might be going 3 at a time because each of these is highlighted, but it's going to fill these up. And once it has filled all these things up, it will complete. And we'll have a new model of engineer. It will make the old engineer of year 30 obsolete. Our supply distance modifier will go up, so better supplies. Our transport modifier will go up. Our airbase production bonus will go up. So overall, good things. We want them. So we would do that, right? You can search, you can say, well, I want to use him, right? And now I want to find what I want to research, right? I might say, okay, well, give me rocket engine. And, is he the best, though? Let's see. Werner von Braun. Is anyone else really good? Messerschmitt is also pretty good. But, if you're going to research the rocket engine, I feel like you got to go with Werner von Braun, right? Start Project. So the more that I use, the more money it's going to cost, but I may not care. Give me... Oh, look at that. Oh, yeah, that's perfect, right? Perfect. Start project. So now the Junkers are doing that. Give me early decryption. Again, I'm really just searching for the tech teams that have the icons that I want. Now here's a choice. Skill 9 with 1 or Skill 7 with 2. I'm not sure which would be the better choice here. I'm just going to go with the 2 in the hopes that that'll make it go quicker. Land Doctrine, Basic Hospital, well, that's probably going to be useful. We'll just rock that out. Let's get started on infantry. And I'll do one more. I want artillery would be useful. And these guys have... There we go. So now we've got all of our tech teams are currently researching or working on stuff. That's what you want. Ideally, I think, is your tech teams just immediately out the gate working on new technologies. Germany, in particular, supposedly has very excellent tech teams, so I would recommend, you know, taking advantage of that from the get-go. If you're going to play as Germany as your first game, try to use your tech teams to their, you know, to your advantage, right? Use them as best you can. And get them researching things you want. Again, I don't know what the best techs are to start researching at the beginning of the game, so I sort of arbitrarily did this for these purposes, but, you know, it's worth a shot, right? We'll start there, we'll see what happens. I'm going to take a quick break to check the stream. I think we're losing some viewers. I just want to check my messages here. Okay, let me get back on track here. Okay, and then finally, the intelligence tab. It looks very similar to the diplomacy tab. It has the very same sort of interface, right? It gives us information about our country, gives us our options to see other countries. But there is a pretty big difference in what we see. Over to the right, we have a circle with a number in it, and what that is going to represent is, I believe, our intelligence, like, effectiveness. So, you know, 35 is probably going to be better than, you know, 0, right? You can see Australia 0. We have 0% chance of doing any of these actions. But in Austria, we have a lot more. So we have 35. If I look here, it says, okay, industrial espionage, I could do that. There's a 12% chance of succeeding. It seems pretty low, all things considered. I could sabotage the industry, I could sabotage their tech teams, I could global manipulation, influence the world opinion against our enemies, fund partisans, sabotage their industry. You know, I could sabotage their industry. I could try to steal their technology, potentially steal their blueprints. So these have different percent chances of happening, and then the money cost. So in order to have a coup, I need to spend 396. I don't have that money. I'm broke. But boy, it'd be nice to be able to form a coup in Austria. Of course, there are more historical shortcuts to get there. Down below in the actual dialog box is the actual information. So let's see. Our intelligence network operates at an estimated 35% efficiency. I think that's the highest on our list besides Belgium at 36. We estimate their intelligence network is 21% effective. I assume that's like their, you know, if we were Austria looking at Germany, their number in this box would be 21. Let's see. They may focus their production towards infantry. We estimate they have 0 convoys, 0 escorts. What are their resources looking like? They have much... Well, they don't have much more oil than us, but they have some more oil. We estimate they have around 7 infantry divisions and pretty much jack shit otherwise. Interesting. Okay. Ooh, Denmark. What's up? Well, that's not so bad. I wonder who would be our best. I don't suppose I can sort by effectiveness, huh? Interesting. Alright, so I can increase our intelligence funding. If I increase the intelligence funding, it will make our spying effectiveness increase. So instead of 13 in Turkey, it might go up. I can decrease intelligence funding, and that will reduce effectiveness, and I think we may get money back, but no point in doing that right now, because we're not doing a whole lot. I can auto spy, so instead of me worrying about this, I can just say, do it, I don't care. I'm not paying attention, I'm doing other stuff. Apply changes on a new button, edit by default. I can just leave this on and hope for the best there. Oh boy, I felt like I've talked forever. And that's just reviewing some of the very, very basic of the interface, and probably a lot to go. So as we attempt to let's learn how to play this game, I think I'll stop here for now. I don't really have any viewers at the moment, so I'm not going to leave anybody hanging. I will see about trying to get this video uploaded to YouTube potentially, so that folks can watch it past tense and review it. Yeah, I think we'll stop here. So thanks for watching, for those who were watching before, and thank you for watching if you're watching this after the fact. I hope to be able to continue this stream and this video series so other folks can enjoy Darkest Hour. I would desperately love to understand Darkest Hour even more. I'm just not very good at it, and hopefully I'll get better at it, and you will too. So thanks everybody, appreciate it. Talk to you again soon, hopefully.